Greetings, ACTIVZ family. Welcome to the May Founder Zoom. I had to think for a second about which month we were in. I almost said April. I can't believe how quickly well, here I'm going to say something I don't want to say, but how fast this year is flying by. We've got Q1 clearly in our rear view mirror, the first month of the second quarter, and now we are squarely in the middle of the second quarter of the year. So my goodness, how time flies when you're having fun. Last couple of months has been incredible. Last month, we had some fun activities going on. Dave and I like to get on the Zoom each month for those of you that are new on the 15th of every month, and we like to talk about some of the highlights of the previous month and give you a sneak peek on things that are coming down the pipeline. So David, how are you? I know that in Utah, spring is blooming and probably a lot of people sneezing from allergies, but aside from allergies, how are things over in your neck of the woods?
Everything's great, Ryan. First, before we do anything, I want to commend you on your choice of wardrobe. You're looking very sharp in that blue shirt and blue jacket. Great minds think alike, apparently.
As are you.
Along with our haircut and everything else, we are twins separated at birth, apparently.
That's right.
So it's great. Yeah, beautiful day here in Utah. Spring is definitely here. Been getting some rain. As I told my wife, April showers bring May flowers. And unfortunately in Utah, May showers bring a lot of weeds, which means that I'm spending my time doing a lot of weeding on weekends. But nevertheless, it beats the snow that we had just a few weeks ago. So we're ready for it. And you're right, April was a pretty fun month. I'm a little more tan than usual, having just got back from Puerto Vallarta. Well, not just a couple weeks ago now, but it was a great time with, I believe, over 400 people who had qualified to join us there, including their guests that qualified to go with them. That was great. Of particular note, I mean, obviously, it's always fun to go be on the sand and be on the beach and all that kind of stuff, have good food. But I thought that the meeting with leaders, that we had several meetings with leaders and talking about what they wanted to accomplish for the rest of the year with their groups and challenges and opportunities and all those things was just terrific. So that was great. And it just reminded me once again, even though we don't have a quote unquote professional sales organization, that doesn't mean that we don't have an organization filled with dedicated, really smart people who want to build something for themselves and for their family. So that was great. That was very notable to me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and April was a great month, I think, for all of us. This last month in Mexico and in a lot of parts of Latin America and in the United States, of course, a lot of people celebrate Holy Week, and so that was an important week for many of our constituents, as well as Easter. And then following Holy Week, we were in Puerto Vallarta, which was, for those of you who weren't there, we had, I can't remember the exact number, 420 people, I think, in total. That was the people who qualified plus a guest. And so it was remarkable to be on that trip. And I think I speak for everybody on that trip. It was probably the very best weather we have ever had on any trip ever. Being in Puerto Vallarta, you might think, oh, hot and humid. It was amazing. It felt like a warm spring day every day. And so that's one that was one for the record books. But really, more important than the weather, probably the highlight for me in this month of April, I actually had a couple of them, but I really wish everybody listening to this Zoom, and I wish everybody could have been there on that Thursday morning, David, when we had the A16s present, and then we had our nutritionist or A9 nutritionist, Annette Jimenez, do a training on Nitrox Pro, which was amazing. It was really off the charts how good she did at really talking about the science, talking about the synergistic effects of using Nitrox Pro with our other products, how it enhances their efficacy and their ability to improve our overall wellness. But what really stood out to me was the presentation of our A16s. The energy in that room, we didn't have all 420 people in that room, but we had about 350 people in this room. And this was a Thursday morning in Puerto Vallarta in the hotel. We rented a large space. And their presentations were just, the energy in that room was off the charts. It was as good or better than any meeting or any conference that we've ever had in the history of our company. It's interesting to see the evolution of all of our distributors, and even at the highest levels, how Christina Godoy has evolved, how Martin Lita has evolved, how Danny Pizarro has evolved, and how many of the other leaders also have evolved, and their ability to connect with their listeners, their ability to train, their ability to instill belief and conviction in the people that are listening to them, and their own conviction is just off the charts. Something that they all shared and talked about, and that we talked about also, is we like to talk about what's next, what's coming down the pipeline, and the importance of anticipating what's next. There was a lot of discussion around, well, right around the corner here in July, we're going to be in Monterrey, Mexico. One of the founders and the president of Pathways Bioscience, Brooks Hybertson, is going to be there with us. Now, it's interesting. Some of you watching this may have seen him, may have met him before, taken your picture with him, but I would venture to say that probably 9 out of 10 of you have not. And so they're talking about the significance of having him at this event. The significance still that of being the only company in the world right now really championing epigenetics and being at the forefront of that movement, being at the forefront of this revolution in health and wellness. And so they talked about why that matters in this ever expanding and growing segment of the wellness category, and how epigenetics really represents what people are going to be talking about in the future. Right now, we still have a small window of time where it's us, right? We're the ones talking about it. We're the ones in the marketplace introducing it, which represents a very, very unique opportunity for distributors. But when you listen to these distributors talk about that, and for me to kind of look in the eyes and interact with the 350 people there, they were catching the vision of, oh my goodness, I've been thinking small. I need to think bigger. Right? I need to think about how I can carve out a much larger portion of equity in this expanding category, right? Versus just, hey, yeah, I buy and I sell products, or I use the products, but really, what does it mean to each distributor on an individual basis that's building a business, right? How big will your business get when in 5 years or 10 years, this is ubiquitous and everybody's talking about epigenetics, right? And it's on the nightly news and it's all over on social media, and there are dozens and dozens and dozens of companies talking about it. Well, if you would have done your job right this year, 2025, and really planted a lot of seeds, started to build your own team, so that when the proverbial wave hits, you're going to have, you're going to be prepared for that. You're going to be prepared to stand up and ride, or there's any number of analogies that you can use, but really the vision that the leaders talked about Thursday morning, it had a lot to do with that. It had a lot to do with preparing for what's coming. And David, I will share kind of something that is, I'm not sure that I believe in coincidences anymore. The longer I live, the more things seem to be all by design and intentional. But they were talking about that, and we were talking about that in Puerto Vallarta. And then fast forward a couple weeks later, I had an opportunity to attend it was a business seminar here near my house, 10 minutes from my house in Roseville, California. John Maxwell, a lot of the listeners know who John Maxwell is. He's written 93 books. He's probably the oldest living sort of icon in the self-help space today. I almost said he's 93. He's actually 78, not 93. But he cut his teeth with the likes of Jim Rohn and many of the greats who have passed. But he is an expert in talking about leadership and also business and trends. And what did he talk about? He talked about the importance of anticipation, right? How looking forward at what's coming and understanding market trends is really key. And he said something really fascinating that I've never heard before that I'll share with everybody right now. He said, if you have anticipation, you don't really need motivation or inspiration. You don't need to look for someone to inspire you. If you're anticipating, excuse me, and you're looking forward to something coming and you're preparing for it. And so I thought that was interesting, that rather than waking up in the morning and looking for, okay, I need something to inspire me to get off the couch. I need someone to motivate me, right? I'm going to jump on a Zoom and see if I can get my motivation for the day. He said, rather than that, you need to find something that to anticipate, right? What are you anticipating? That anticipation is far more powerful than any other sort of external inspiration or motivation that you might look for. So that message really coincided with what our A6 teams were talking about in Puerto Vallarta. And so that was really the highlight for me for April, where both of those messages. And in a moment, I'll share a couple other thoughts about what I learned from the seminar with John Maxwell. But April, in spite of the fact that we had a lot of distractions, most of the ACTIVZ market is in Latin America, right? And here in the United States, it's very Latin heavy. And so many people celebrate Holy Week. And then we had 420 people in Puerto Vallarta for a week. And, our most productive builders were there because they qualified to be there, and the leaders were there. In spite of that, we had a strong month. And I like to look at April and say, had we not had those 2 weeks where we had people on vacation and we had people, on the beaches of Puerto Vallarta, I think that it would have been an incredible month. But what it did for us is it brought us to today. It really set the tempo for May. I've had multiple conversations with leaders who are talking about May, how all roads are leading to May, and how May is going to be such a big month for them and such a big month in their businesses and the goals that they have for the month of May, because there's no distractions. Unless you consider Mother's Day a distraction, that's not a distraction. It's a great opportunity to celebrate our moms and our wives and every other woman in our life. But aside from that, there's no distractions, and there's 31 days. So it is the key month to really reach your goals. And I would just want to share that with all of you, because that's where our leaders' heads are. That's what the leaders in ACTIVZ are thinking about. They're really focused on making this a banner month. So anyways, that was a highlight for April. There are probably others that aren't coming to mind readily, but David, what are you looking forward to? What are you excited about in our near future?
Well, a lot of things. The coincidence I thought that you were going to talk about was when Annette Jimenez, who you mentioned earlier, was talking about Nitrox Pro. She mentioned that during her days of qualifying
Oh
for
yeah.
licensure, one of the books she had to read was actually authored by Dr. Joe Maroon. As you know, as everyone here knows, is on our scientific advisory board and is a neurosurgeon. And specifically, what he was saying about the importance of nitric oxide. And I think that's really interesting that a neurosurgeon who's concerned about all things related to the brain and the whole neurosystem recognizes that proper blood flow is important for your brain to function and everything else to function correctly. And so Nitrox Pro is really incredible. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was that as you talk about looking forward and where we are from the company standpoint and being the only ones really talking about epigenetics, I compare it, what came to mind as you were talking about that was being the first one to sell tractors or cars to a village filled with people still using, oxen and horses to pull wagons and plows and things. And you come in and say, man, this is going to make your life so much easier. And there might be some resistance saying, no, we're fine. But then after a while, when they see how much easier it really and better it really does make their life, then they start adopting it. And it might take a little bit of time. And I think that people might face that a little bit. But as people really try the products, and you invite trial and testing, they'll see that it really is important. Finally, one other thing, I'm looking forward to the Monterey event. For those of you who might not, sometimes I think we take for granted that everyone knows who we're talking about, but Dr. Brooks Hybertson, whom you mentioned, Ryan, is with Pathways Biosciences. If people don't know who that is the research group led by Dr. Joe McCord, who is probably the foremost scientist in regards to free radical biology and oxidative stress. That's a group started by him and other scientists. Dr. Hybertson is the president of that company and really is a protege of Dr. McCord. They've researched together for now decades. And Dr. McCord in his later years, frankly, has really pretty much passed the torch to Brooks Hybertson to be to light the way, so to speak, in terms of this type of research, NRF2 activation research, and the importance of that. And so when people go there and listen to Dr. Hybertson, it's going to be a lot like listening to Dr. McCord himself. What he's going to be saying is exactly what Dr. McCord would be saying, with some elaboration in terms of going to the future. So if you can get there, obviously Dr. Hybertson is going to be speaking in English. And so I would encourage anyone who has a desire to go to be there, because that's going to be an important event. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to hearing more of the stories. We've had a number of new people join us. Some of whom have experience in network marketing and many of whom don't. And yet they've hit the ground running. They are amazing other people and perhaps themselves with the progress that they're having and the ranks that they're advancing. And they are tremendous inspiration to all of us. And so I think that I'm looking forward to hearing more of those stories. As you were talking about the A16s presenting in Puerto Vallarta, I was listening and trying to follow their presentations by looking at Google Translate on my telephone. And Google Translate's pretty good, but it's not perfect. And there are definitely things that I was thinking, I'm pretty sure they didn't say that, because it's just some type of nonsense or sometimes some type of weird thing. But it really didn't matter that I understood completely everything that they said, because what I did understand, I understood it enough, combined with the passion in which they were delivering it and the belief that they had to say, yeah, I know that these guys believe it and they've really accomplished it. And it just made me think about when we give presentations to others, we sometimes think we've got to have it perfectly. We've got to say exactly the right things. We've got to make sure they understand everything. No, you don't. You just have to talk about the things that are important to you and let your passion and belief and your authenticity carry the day. And it will. Because the people that you're talking to are people that you know, people that trust you, they love you, they believe in you. They already know that you're not going to try and fool them. You're just going to try and share something with them. And so I look forward to, like I say, to hearing more and more of those stories, because especially in Monterey, as we have leaders and new people who have just started rank advancing, do presentations, it's always so inspiring to listen to the stories of the paths people have trod and the progress and the things that they've been able to achieve. Again, like I said earlier, much to the surprise of the friends and neighbors who told them it was impossible, and even to themselves. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I think that that's probably the biggest thing in the near future that we should all be looking forward to. I know that our pre-registration numbers are very high right now. I think we might be at 1,500-ish. But guys, if you're wondering how to ratchet your business up and really just kind of take the bull by the horns, you don't have to be an expert. You do have to pay the price, and that really is get to the events and get your team to the events. Get 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20 or 50 people that you care about to this event in Monterey, because when you do that, you're going to let these presenters that David's talking about, do a lot of the heavy lifting, right? They're going to do a lot of training. They're going to we all are going to be sharing the vision and painting the vision for what's coming. And so that's something that you don't need to do with your team if you can get your team there. And the people who are the most productive, the most successful in our industry of direct selling, or just simply working for yourself in network marketing, are the people who leverage these events and build event to event. So do whatever you have to get to that event. It's going to be another incredible lineup of success stories, new people. We're really focused on showcasing people who are having success now. It's great that 7 years ago, 6 years ago, 5 years ago, people had success and rank advanced, but what we're going to put in front of you are people who are having success today, right? The market changes and evolves. And so I want you to hear from them in person, to hear their story. So that's what's going to happen in Monterey in July. Also, quick reminder, this month and next month are the last 2 months, guys, to qualify for Los Cabos. Los Cabos is going to be off the charts. Everything that I've heard about where we're going, it really is it's a 5-star resort. It's a 5-star location, all included. and it's just going to be a really great way to close out summer, taking place in August. So make sure you really go above and beyond. The purpose of these trips and who we reward and who we want to take on these trips. Sometimes people reach out to us and they say, hey, this is too hard, I can't do it. But then we look at their activity levels and say, well, you haven't changed what you're doing. You're doing the same thing today that you were doing 6 months ago or 4 months ago or a year ago. The point of these trips is to reward people for going above and beyond, right? That's where we're willing to pay for you plus a loved one, all paid, all expenses paid, inclusive trip for a week. So that's what we're looking to reward. So if you want to get there, it does require going above and beyond. But above and beyond in what? Well, the way you get points is enrollments, auto ships, right? And helping your own personals have an auto ship. We reward duplication. We reward when you rank advance, and we reward you when people who you've brought into this business also rank advance. So when you lift up other people, that's how you get points. And we're also giving you points, of course, for attending this Zoom and other corporate Zooms, as well as in-person events. So guys, you know how to get the points. It's just everyday business building activities. I'm going to switch gears real quick, and I want to share with you in closing something that I think is really important. David, you mentioned, not being afraid to make mistakes. That is something else that John Maxwell, when I listened to him a couple of weeks ago, he talked about that. And just so you know, he has mentored hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over his career on leadership. And he talks about this fear of failure is probably one of the biggest inhibitors that keep people from succeeding. It's just the fear of failure. It's not failure, it's the fear of failure. And I got to think about that, and I thought about all of you who are watching this. I'm like, man, that is so true. So many people throw the towel in, or they simply throwing the towel in really means just stop working, right? When you stop sharing and you say, I'm kind of bored of this. It's not for me. It's not working, right? It's working for other people, but I've lost my steam. That's throwing the towel in. But a lot of what motivates that is just the fear that you might fail. And I was there with a distributor, and I won't say her name, but she's someone who lives here locally, and she hasn't really got in 100% with ACTIVZ. She has another full-time job, but she is trying to part-time it with ACTIVZ. And she says, I'm just afraid of failing. And I said, well, what does that look like? Like, what are you really afraid of? And she mentioned, well, I'm afraid that I'm going to put a lot of effort into it and then it's not going to work. So she's afraid of putting the effort in and then maybe losing money, maybe losing time. And I just reminded her, but look at what you would learn, right? That's where you're learning. It's kind of like saying, I don't want a career as a doctor or as a lawyer or as an accountant, whatever, because I'm afraid that I have to go to college and study it first. Well, that's where you learn. You go to college, you go to the universities to learn, and that qualifies you to practice, right? Well, the same is true here. What qualifies you to be a successful professional in ACTIVZ and network marketing, it's the process of failing. It's the process of learning. That's your boot camp. That's your university. And John Maxwell talked a little bit about 5 really important stages. He says, we have to remember the first stage towards success is testing. You got to test everything, right? Try it. Open your mouth. Talk, right? Share something with somebody. And if it doesn't work out the right way, well, you've just tested it. Well, test it a different way, then test it a different way, then test it a different way. And he talked about said something interesting. Well, I'll just share it quickly. He said the greatest detriment to tomorrow's success is today's success. And what that means is sometimes if 20 years ago or 10 years ago you were successful in network marketing or in business or in sales or some related field, and you learned certain things and you try and do the same things today and you're unwilling to test new things, you're probably not going to succeed at doing what you did 10 years ago. So he talked about how that can be detrimental, but the next point was failure. And he says, if you test a lot, you're going to fail a lot. It's that simple. And of course, we've all heard the analogies of people like Michael Jordan, of people like Ray Kroc, of people like Colonel Sanders, who started Kentucky Fried Chicken at the ripe old age of, I think, 84, who had failed his entire career until he got, this great chicken recipe, or Michael Jordan, who failed. I mean, it's just staggering when you look at how many shots he took and missed them, how many games he played and lost them. But we never talk about that. We only highlight his successes, and many people think he's the GOAT, at least of our generation, David. People think maybe younger generations might think others are the GOAT.
Yeah.
But the point is that's what failure is really important. It's an important part of the plan. So embrace it. Don't run from it. Realize that we only learn when we fail. The third point that John Maxwell touched on was re-entering that cycle, right? You got to re-enter. If you fail and you give up, then you're out, right? But if you say, I'm going to test something else, then you're still in a cycle. And then he referred to something as, I can't remember the phrase. I can't remember, but it's ratcheting up, it's re-entering. And so when you re-enter that cycle, you re-enter it at a slightly higher level, right? You learn from your mistakes, and it's a process of learning, right? Of learning and then implementing what you've learned. And that cycle just never ends. So that sounds a lot shorter than five points, but what I really took away from that from John Maxwell was the importance of the failure step. And I think a lot about our distributors, David. All these years I've done boot camps with people, and that is probably it does continue to be the single greatest fear that people have, is that they're gonna fail, but they don't even know at what. And I want to remind everybody that when you put your toe in the water, well, first of all, you're starting a business, right? You have great tax write-offs, especially here in the United States, just for starting your own business, right? Whether you make money or not, you can write everything off. The second is you have a best-in-class epigenetic line of products that are going to greatly benefit you, right? So you're not losing anything there. And three, if you're starting to follow the success guide and follow the example of the leaders and build your business, you're only going to learn, and you're going to succeed failure to failure, right? Fall forward. You're going to succeed and eventually win and eventually hit that A16 rank as a process of failures. You're going to look back and say, you know what? I failed my way here. I just didn't give up. I didn't quit. So I want to share that with you, because as we think about what's coming next, I really hope more of you embrace that and can set a goal for May, how you're going to end this month, as well as what you're going to do to end the year strong at a very high rank, right? I don't want you to set it, one rank or other. You set a lofty goal and do everything you can to achieve it. And just be willing to fail your way there. Say, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to ask for referrals. I'm going to leave the door open when I talk to people, right? I'm going to keep them updated when they tell me no. Tell me no. In other words, I'm going to follow up with them. I'm going to follow up with people minimum of 7 to 10 times over the course of, a couple of years. Just decide in advance what your mindset is going to be. And if you can do that and say, hey, I'm okay with failing forward, falling forward, and failing to my success. If you're willing to do that, you'll make it. The distributors that we have, that are leaders, that back in Puerto Vallarta, David, who talked to us, Danny, Martine, and Christina, they were not born as an A16, right? Maybe inside their mind, they were the type of person that really was ambitious and knew that they were born for greatness. But I think we are all born for greatness. But they failed their way there, right? I know Christina's story. I know Martine's story. I know Danny's story. I know things that they did right. I know things that they did wrong. They did a lot of things that I look at and I'm like, well, that's okay. You learned, right? But without those failures, there's no way they would have landed on A16. So follow the example of the leaders and fail to your success. And that's my challenge for everybody on this month's Founders Call. David, what's your final challenge for people?
Same thing. Go on out there and screw up. Make lots of mistakes. Do what you can. It just reminded me of when I was in college. I actually used to teach Japanese classes to pay for my way through school. And this despite the fact that I made tons of mistakes in Japanese. I remember one time, instead of asking a woman instead to call her husband, I asked her to kill her husband. She had a smile on her face and she thought, it looked like she was actually considering it. But my favorite story about that was one time I was at a meeting and a woman showed up and she apologized. She said, I was going to have a friend here and she canceled the last minute. I'm so sorry about that. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. In my best Japanese, most polite Japanese, said, at your earliest opportunity, please go ahead and introduce her to us. Well, I intended to use the word introduce, which is shokai. Instead, I used the word shiko. And so it came out, it sounds kind of the same to many people's ears, vastly different meaning. Shokai does mean to introduce, shiko means to urinate. And so what I asked her to do at the earliest opportunity was very different than introducing someone. But here's the thing, she didn't miss a beat. Her eyes didn't raise and say, what did you just say? Because actually, because of the affinity that she had for me, her ears translated that into the right word.
Interesting.
And I had the grace. And that's what's going to happen when you fall forward, when you're doing this with the right intentions. Even if you say some things that are not quite right or whatever, people are going to give you the benefit of the doubt because they're going to feel your authenticity. They're going to feel the passion that you have. And so it's like we said before, there are no magic words. There's just action. There's just, wanting to share. And if that comes across, failing your way to the top is great advice. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how many people follow that advice. And I'm going to go out there and try and fail a little bit more myself. So on that note, Mr. Thompson, great job. Great to see you. And let's see if we can always be in lockstep with our wardrobe choices. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, David. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Bye.